In this problem, we are told that the cost of 8 muffins and 2 quarts of milk is $18. We are also told that the cost of 3 muffins and 1 quart of milk is $7.50. And the question we're asked to think about is, how much does 1 muffin and 1 quart of milk cost? Because we're asked to find 2 different items, we know we're going to be needing a system of equations. So just like we've been practicing, let's start by identifying the question and assigning some variables. So right here, we can highlight the question that we're asked to consider. And from that, we can give ourselves a pair of variables. So for this problem, I'm going to use M to represent the cost of 1 muffin, and I will use Q to represent the cost of a quart of milk. Remember to write your variables down and to identify them so that as you're going through your work, if you start to feel confused, you can go back and reread the information that you've written for yourself. Alright, so we have our variables. Now it's time to start looking for the 2 relationships that we're told about. And our first relationship is actually coming out of that first sentence. And we know that the cost of 8 muffins and 2 quarts of milk is $18. So we can write that equation. We can use 8 times the cost of a muffin and add to that 2 quarts times the cost of each quart, and we know our total is going to be $18. So now we can look at our second relationship, and that's going to come out of the second sentence in this particular problem. And we're told that the cost of 3 muffins plus the cost of 1 quart of milk is equal to $7.50. So now that we've established the 2 equations, we can start looking for opposite coefficients either on M or on Q. Well, 8 and 3 are not opposites, and 2 and 1 are not opposites, so that means we're going to need to multiply one of our 2 equations. And I think I'm going to multiply the second equation by -2, because if I do that, I'm going to wind up with opposite coefficients on Q. So in the process of doing this, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my first equation. So I have my 8m plus the 2q equals 18. And then when I multiply -2 by that second equation, I wind up with -6m minus 2q equals -15. And now since I have the opposite coefficients on q, I can combine those 2 equations. And I wind up with 2m is going to be equal to 3. And so when I divide both sides by 2, I wind up with m equals 1.5. And this would be a good time to use decimals because we're talking about money. So 1.5 is actually representing $1.50 here. So now that we have that information, we can go back to one of our original equations and solve for q. And because the second equation is going to reduce my amount of calculations, I'm going to use that. So we're going to have 3 times m, and in this case m is $1.50, plus 1q equals $7.50. So when I multiply 3 times 150, I'm going to get 450. I'm still thinking money, so I'm going to keep that decimal. Plus the 1q equals the 750. And this is solving for a single variable just like we've been doing together. So I can subtract the 450 from both sides. Nope, minus 450, not 550. And on the left side, I'm left with q. And on the right, I'm left with $3. So that tells me that a quart of milk is $3. So the last thing I need to do is to write my answer. And so I would have to tell my reader that one muffin, all caps here, costs $1.50, and 1 quart of milk costs $3.